Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. The Tough Girl podcast is sponsorship and ad-free thanks to the monthly financial support of patrons. To find out more about supporting your favourite podcast and becoming a patron, please check out Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. There's currently over 230 patrons supporting the mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media. Take action now and become one of them. All patrons will get their name on a dedicated patrons page on the Tough Girl website. All female patrons $5 and above are invited to join the closed Facebook group, the Tough Girl Tribe. Today, I'm absolutely delighted that we're going to be speaking with Jasmin Paris, a British ultra runner who won the 268-mile spine race and became the first woman to win the race outright. So Jasmin, I'd love to know more about where you grew up.
So I was born in Manchester, and I grew up in the Peak District in a place called Hadfield near Glossop. So it's right under Bleaklow, so not far from Kinderscow. And I'm half Czech, so part of my childhood was always spent in the Czech Republic. We have a cottage in the south in an area called Šumava, which is very much in the hills. So I was very lucky to have quite an outdoorsy childhood between those two places.
Oh, fantastic. And is that when you started running?
No, I didn't start really running until I left university. So when I was at university, I sort of did a little bit, but it was sort of maybe a 15-20 minute run around the park type of thing. I didn't really consider myself a runner. So I started running properly when I left university, and I was working in practice in a small animal practice in Glossop, and that's when I started hill running. So I never really did road running. I just went straight to the hills.
Why did that come about? Was there a reason that you started getting into hill running?
I guess it was the place where I was, but really, I mean, I guess the catalyst probably was that a colleague suggested I go on to a local fell race. So he knew I was kind of outdoorsy and enthusiastic, and he suggested I try a local fell race, and I did, and I had an amazing time. I didn't do very well, and I was very oxygen deficient at the end of it. But I just loved it. I sort of felt like I'd come home to a group. It was sort of like meeting old friends. You know, these people had so much in common with them, and I hadn't really known properly that this sport of fell running existed until I guess maybe subconsciously, or maybe I was aware in the periphery that there was something like that. But this was the sort of first time it became clear to me, and it was wonderful. It was a great discovery. So then I joined a local club and started training with them in the evenings. And at first I was quite slow. I used to always hope that somebody slower than me would turn up to the training, so that I wasn't at the back. But it got better. So that's why I guess it all kicked off.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think it's amazing when you can meet, you know, like a similar-minded group of people and people who are friendly and supportive and encouraging. And then you just, like you said, you feel as though you're almost like coming home, and it's like old friends, and it makes you want to go and run and to enter these different races.
Yeah.
Did you ever sort of set like a big goal for yourself one year where you're like, okay, this is the fell race that I'm going to enter and I'm going to train for it? Or how did you start entering more and more races?
I think I was just very enthusiastic. So I didn't really consider the limitations that much. I just entered races that looked fun. And I guess I jumped quite quickly to running longer things. So even the first year of running, I ran, I think, 3 ultra races. And that was just, you know, a friend suggested it type of thing, and I did it. So I didn't really have the right training for that, but it was fine, and I enjoyed them very much. So I think that was my approach all the way along, just to do the things that I enjoyed and the races that looked fun, and the wilder, the rougher, the better for me. And I guess the first time I sort of had specific goals, I think when I probably around 2015 when I ran the Dragon's Back, I guess that was a goal, that race. And I also won the British Championships for the first time that year. So that was, I guess, a goal as well. And then in 2016, when I broke the records for the 3 rounds, the Bob Graham, the Paddy Buckley and the Ramsey round, that was definitely the aim for that year. So I guess in terms of sort of concrete aims, those were the years that really those crystallized, I guess.
So what year was it that you ran the 3 ultra races?
So I think I started fell running in 2008 and sort of time when because I graduated then. So must have been sort of autumn around then. I think 2009, I ran 3 ultras in a space of, I think, about 6 weeks. Maybe, yeah. And one of those was, the first one of those was Wuthering Heights. Yes, the Haworth Hobble. And is it called Wuthering Heights or Wuthering Hike? I don't know. That race is in Yorkshire. It's a really good race. It's very friendly. There's lots of good food on the way around. In fact, there's a checkpoint where they give you whiskey if you want it before you climb the kind of the highest point. So, and I ran that with friends. It was a lot of fun. I think that's the great thing about ultras, is they're just more of a kind of journey, and you can chat to people and enjoy the scenery and eat lots of food. So yeah, it's good fun.
And did you take a cheeky shot of whiskey before you headed up that hill?
I didn't. I'm not a great fan of whiskey, but the friend that I was running with, I think he probably had mine. So he was a big fan.
Is that the same friend who keeps suggesting these ultra races you should enter?
Yeah. This is a chap. He's actually unfortunately passed away not that long ago of a brain tumour, but he's called John Hewitt, and yeah, he was a huge mentor for me in the early days of fell running, and he's definitely one of those people that, he really encouraged me to just go out and give it a go, and he had this incredible belief in me. So it was it was wonderful to have him as a friend.
I'm so sorry for your loss, and incredible memories. And it's amazing to have people that believe in you and support you and encourage you, because, look how far it's taken you.
Yeah.
Just go back to those 3 ultra races, because that is a huge thing to do, especially sort of only after a year after really getting into running. Mentally, when you were doing like the ultra races, did you find them intimidating, or were you sort of a little bit nervous about doing them, or did it not even really cross your mind about the distances? And like you said, it was just for the fun and the enjoyment and going on the journey. So mentally, what was happening around those races?
Well, I think there's actually, and this actually carries forward to the spine. I think there's a real sort of, I find it quite exciting to do something where you don't really know if you can do it, where you don't really know if you can finish it. And that was probably in the early days of I guess running an ultra of sort of 33 miles or something had that feel to it. Like I didn't know whether I'd be able to do it. And that was kind of exciting. And that was partly the reason I signed up for the spine, because I was sort of tempted by this, the unknown, because it's just fun to set yourself challenges that you don't really know if you can do them, to sort of push yourself in new ways. So I guess it was like that. That said, my background was really in hill walking, and I'd done loads of long distance walking. So probably more than most people would consider hiking. Like these were really big days, big rucksacks, high mountains, and you might climb 3,000 meters a day, and walk 30 miles. So it was these sort of my background, I guess, is pretty. It's in endurance hiking, I guess. So, and running these ultra races, especially in the fells, you do quite a bit of walking anyway. So it's not actually that dissimilar, It is different, but not so as much as you might think. So I guess that gave me the confidence to give it a go.
Yeah. And also for a lot of things with ultras as well, it's about actually getting that time on feet. So if you've actually been, going out and doing these big days, 30 miles with a rucksack, and then suddenly you're not having a rucksack anymore, you're much lighter, and it's just, you can still walk the uphills, run the downhills. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the Dragon's Back race in Wales. So it's a 5-day race, but could you tell us a little bit more about that race, what was involved, what you enjoyed about it?
Yeah, so it's a stage race that runs from north to south in Wales, and it kind of goes along the spine for all the sort of mountains of Wales. The first day, I think, the first and second day are probably for me the nicest days in the race, because they're the sort of most technical and probably the most wild. What's involved? Most of the stages probably are around 40 to 60 kilometres, I'm guessing, per day. It's quite different to the spine race, for example, in the sense that it's a stage race. So being one of the faster runners, I was lucky because you tend to run the stages in sort of maybe 8 to 10 hours, and then you'd have the rest of those 24 hours to recover. Your kit gets moved from you between the campsites. It gets moved for you between the campsites, and they put up the tent and so on. So all you actually have to do is, once you've arrived, is find your kit bag and go and sort your stuff out and go. If you want to go to sleep or you want to eat or whatever, they cook for you and so on. So So you're actually sort of self-sufficient when you're running during the day, but you're quite well catered for in the evenings and at the rest stops. So it's very much a stage race, not an all in one kind of a non-stop race.
I mean, one of the things I think is really important is that rest and recovery in between the stages. Do you have like a routine? Are there set things that you always do when you get back from like, you know, a day out completing a stage? What's your rest and recovery like?
I guess I don't have. I think important things are to eat. I think it's really important, especially on these longer things that you can maybe go for a day not eating very much, but if you're going to do it 5 days back to back, then it really will start to tell. So trying to eat really well in the evenings when you get back. And also I've always found that cold water really helps me. So I don't, you know, I'm not saying this is anything scientific. It's just that I like it. Like, it makes me feel better, and it always kind of recovers me. It makes me feel sort of alive again if I just go into cold water after running or after walking long distances. So on the Dragon's Back, there were plenty of places. I think almost every day I found a river or a stream or a kind of pool of some sort, and I just went swimming after the day's race, so that helped as well.
Tell me more about the nutrition and the food, because eating a lot during your training to help you recover, to help feed you while you're out in the mountains burning these calories. What sort of things are you eating?
So once I'm back at home, I just tend to eat normal, like a healthy, balanced diet type of just normal food. I'm not one to sort of go into shakes and gels and energy bars and so on. If I can, even on long races, I tend to just try to eat normal food. So for me, things that work, like I like hot cross buns with lots of butter. If you're in later stages of a race, then things like especially if you've got someone carrying your kit, or if you're actually getting a drop bag, then things like rice pudding or baked beans or fruit salad goes down quite well. I tend to save gels, for example, for a moment when I'm really struggling, when I'm having a kind of a low, because I think they have a part to play there. They can pick you up in that sort of situation, but I wouldn't use them as a kind of standard go-to. So the kind of snacks on the hill would be things like more like trail mix, and I guess I do eat chocolate. So on the Spine race, I ate quite a lot of chocolate bars, bagels. And when you get, the problem is when you get to later stages, things get a bit dry, so it can be difficult to choose stuff like that.
You had an absolutely incredible performance on the Dragon's Back race in Wales. You know, first female finisher, coming second overall. What an absolute incredible result. You did the Dragon's Back race in 2015, but you also you won the British Championships. Was that before or after the Dragon's Back race? Oh, it was kind of both, because the British Championships is it's composed of, you have to run 3 races to count. There's 4 races in total. So there's one in Ireland, one in Scotland, one in Wales, and one in England. And you have to run 3 of those to count. So I can't remember, but at least maybe 2 of them I'd already run 2 races before that, and I ran subsequently another race after that. So it was either side of the Dragon's Back. Yeah, and then we actually also raced, that year was a bit crazy, because I also raced the Scottish Long Classic series of races and the Lakeland Long Classic series of races, and we raced this 8-day stage race in the Alps as well, called the Transalps. So I think at that year I raced every single weekend except for 2 that season. So it was really full on. There's no way that I could do that now with a child. Like, it just wouldn't be fair to drag her around to races every single weekend. But at that point, it was just something we did that year. So it was exciting, but it was pretty full on. That is really full on. I mean, I'm just thinking literally about how your body recovers. I mean, I know we did talk a little bit about like the rest and the recovery, but doing that sheer volume of running and that amount of competition in races, because you are performing at the highest level, how is your body coping?
I guess I just sort of got to a point where I was pretty fit, so it wasn't and I guess at that point we probably didn't do that much training between races. Like, racing almost was keeping me quite fit, if you see what I mean. So it was more that you'd sort of recover a bit midweek and then you'd race again. I actually ran the Glencoe Skyline as well. That was the first year the Glencoe Skyline was on that year, so I did that race as well. But I guess probably just because you didn't do that much training once the season kicked off, I sort of raced to stay fit, and did it that way instead.
So, are you working with a coach? Are you doing strength work around this as well? Like, how are you? What are you doing?
I didn't, to be honest, at that time I didn't have a coach, and I didn't do specific strength work. I did naturally some cross training, so I like swimming outdoors. We live right by a reservoir that actually lots of people come to open water swimming, so I'm very lucky in that sense. And I guess the hiking and things, but I didn't. And now I do have now I'm coached by, well, this year anyway, for the spine and for the PTL, I've been coached by Damien Hall. And we have done some strength. I have been doing some strength work, but around then I didn't know.
What was the highlight from that year for you? Because there's a lot of amazing stuff that you completed.
It's difficult. It's difficult to say. Probably the Dragon's Back. But yeah, it would be hard to call, because I was pretty proud. I was proud to win the British as well, because obviously that was the first time. But I think overall, the Dragon's Back.
Yeah. When you're racing, when you're running, what's going through your head?
Lots of different things go through your head, don't they? And it sort of depends how short the race is. So the British, you have to do a mixture of distances, and there's a short race and it'll just be a few miles. And at that point, I'm not sure that you think about very much. It's just a bit of sort of all out. You're just trying to breathe and go as fast as you can. And then on longer races, you have more time to think. And obviously, if you're running a fell race, then you have to spend a proportion of your time thinking about which way you're supposed to go, because especially the longer races, you might not be with anyone, or even if you are, it doesn't mean they're going the right way. So you have to think about navigating your way through. And then if you're running something like the Spine, where I had loads of time to think if I wanted to, then sometimes I didn't think at all. Sometimes it's nice to just switch off when you're running. I think it's kind of like it's a mindfulness, I guess. And some people go to a room and sit all together to do that, and other people go and run in the hills. So I guess it's a form of mindfulness. So sometimes I think, sometimes I don't think, and it sort of depends on the context.
Do you ever run with music or listen to podcasts while you run?
No, I only listen to music if I have to go to the gym. I don't really enjoy doing that.
Let's move on to 2016, because you talked about the rounds, the 3 rounds, the Bob Graham round, and then I've forgotten the name of the other 2 rounds.
Yeah, the Charlie Ramsey round and the Paddy Buckley round.
Yeah. So you were racing them, and you said that this was like, a plan of yours and something that you were training towards. Was the plan to go out to get the new record?
So I just wanted to do them as fast as I could do them, really. Honestly, I thought that there was a reasonable chance I could break the records, just based on my running form. I guess you just know how you're running, and I felt that I could break the records. Yeah. So honestly, I did think that I could break them, but I didn't know how much by. I just wanted to give it my best shot and see what happened. And the year was sort of targeted towards that, like sort of the training that I did over the winter going into before the Bob Graham attempt. I did train quite a lot. In fact, I was quite often training twice a day then, because I was cross training once a day and running once a day. And then we went to the mountains in Spain, sort of about a month before I did the Bob Graham attempt. And the aim was to sort of, again, do one of those sort of hiking trips with lots of time on your feet, get some altitude. That was, I think, really good last minute training in the lead up to the Bob Graham.
What was the most challenging aspect of, say, for example, on the Bob Graham round?
For example, to be honest, the Bob Graham round and the Charlie Ramsey round, I found quite, I didn't find them. I was lucky because I had a really good day. I had wonderful support. We had good weather, only because for both of those rounds, I delayed the start. So I had an alternative date, and I said, I'm not going to go this day because the weather was bad. I genuinely think that bad weather it massively reduces your chances of running it fast or even completing one of these rounds. So both of those attempts I did delay, but when it got to the day, I had perfect weather, I had brilliant support, I felt fit, I wasn't injured. So everything kind of went right. And I can't honestly say that I didn't particularly suffer that much. I mean, obviously sort of in the latter stages, sort of the latter third of both of those rounds, I was, pretty tired. So I was having to dig deeper to sort of just keep going at that sort of speed. But it wasn't ever like I ever felt like I was really suffering. Whereas when I ran the Paddy Buckley, I definitely did feel like that. That was really hard. Because it was at the end of the season, I was really tired. There was lots of things that sort of added up to make that a real challenge. And that, for me, the Paddy Buckley round was harder than running the Montane Spine race for me. So, if you're asking about the Bob Graham, then there wasn't any particular, I wasn't that stressed, that unhappy, that sort of, I didn't find it that difficult, but the Paddy Buckley I did.
why was the Paddy Buckley so much more challenging? I mean, I know it was obviously, you know, the end of the season, you were tired and everything else, but was there anything in particular about that round?
So I guess it's less well known, so I knew it less. There were sections I hadn't run ever before, so that, I think mentally it makes it harder if you don't really know what's coming. I ran it on the first weekend in October, so it was already, obviously the daylight was much shorter, so we ran more of it in the dark, and that makes it harder. Although we had great weather for it the day before, it had rained an awful lot, so there was a section where we were we kept having to go through these there's a section after Capel Curig, there's this sort of nondescript this section of kind of this heathery, boggy terrain, and there's these pools of water that you kept having to cross the fence line and go through these pools of water, and sometimes they were sort of waist deep, which is obviously not that great if you're trying to run a fast round, to be wading through water repeatedly. So all of those things, but the main thing was just that I was tired. Like, apart from running the Bob Graham and the Ramsey round, I'd also done the Sky Running Extreme Series, and I'd run the World Championship for the Sky Running, and these were all big races. You know, like that World Championship was like, I think 80k or something, or maybe it was 100k. Maybe it was they're quite long races and with a lot of ascent. And then I'd also run the UTMB, which was 100 miles, and this was all in that space of that season. I was just tired by the end of it. So I remember feeling tired on the second leg, and I was just thinking, oh, this is going to be a really long day. So that all of those reasons, really, I was just ready for a rest.
Yeah. Have you dealt with much injury over your running career?
I think I got injured more in the first few years, and that's probably because I just jumped straight from doing not very much to doing quite long races. I think maybe over time I've got a little bit better at recognizing when I'm getting injured and stopping and training, or sort of sorting it out, going to see someone. I say that, but this year I went on with a grumbling Achilles for quite a long time before actually doing much about it. So I can't say I'm perfect in that sense. And the other thing is that I've learned to cross train a bit more in the sense, maybe do. I just sort of learned the value of mixing things up a little bit if you want to not get injured. But as I say, I still do get occasionally injured, but much more in the first few years, I think, that I was running.
And there was a bit of a change to the whole of your family, really, because you had a new addition. How was it being pregnant and running, then having the baby, then getting back into running? What was that like in terms of a transition?
Yeah, I mean, when I was pregnant, it was quite nice, really, because before that, I guess, especially 2016 being quite a big year, there was quite a lot of expectation as to what I would do next. And then I got pregnant, so then all that pressure came off, really, because I wasn't expected to do anything next. And then I could just run without anybody really making any judgment. It was quite nice. And I was lucky that I could just ran all the way through my pregnancy, really. I got injured at one point with my sacroiliac joint. For a few weeks I couldn't run. And that's probably because when you're pregnant, all your sort of ligaments and things relax a little bit because of the hormones. So I think I just kind of pulled something a little bit, went a little bit out of sort of kilter. But I was lucky and I could start running again after that. So I ran up to the day that she was born, my daughter. And then it was fairly straightforward, the birth. Although she came out the wrong way, but that didn't, in terms of the general birth, it was quite straightforward. So I was lucky in that sense. Yeah, so then I was sort of running again gently 4 weeks after she was born, and then started running a bit more sort of seriously about 6 weeks after. And then it's just a case of getting fit again. And that took a little while. And, there's challenge. It's not so much necessarily just a physical challenge. It's just the time challenge and balancing everything. So obviously when she was small, there was the challenge of fitting in training around breastfeeding and so on. But now that I'm back at work and she's doing much more, it's just really a challenge of fitting in around being a mum and having a career and everything else. So there's lots of challenges, but that's roughly the sort of how it went.
I mean, how do you fit your running in now? I mean, do you have a particular time that you head out to go running? I mean, do you balance it with your partner? How do you make it work for you?
Yeah, so my partner runs as well. So I train in the mornings usually before work, and then my partner runs in the evenings. We have a dog, so at least that way he gets out twice a day. He's pretty fit, actually, our dog. And so that's basically the way we do it. Sometimes So say at weekends we might kind of train, might sort of fit in the park run into the training. So maybe I would run to the park run, and then we both run the park run. We take it in turns to push the buggy. For example, we do some training together in the sense that we go hiking, carrying the baby. So that's good training in itself as well. But yeah, I think the key for me is to get the training in before work in the morning, because that's sort of protected time. If you leave it to the evening, I always find that something else creeps in, or I'm too tired or hungry. And so yeah, that's my time to spend with my daughter instead.
It's actually a great way to start the day, sort of getting up, going outside, getting some fresh air, getting your exercise done, and then you just feel as though you've accomplished something already.
Yeah.
Hearing about the spine race, why did you decide that you were going to take on this challenge? How did it come about?
So several reasons. One I sort of alluded to earlier was that it's kind of exciting to set yourself a challenge where you don't really know how well you can do it, whether you can complete it. And I guess I probably thought that I could walk the spine race, but if I was actually racing it, that's a whole different sort of kettle of fish. And I didn't really know how that would go. So that was one thing. The other thing was that it came to sort of autumn last year, and I'd won the British, after having my daughter, I won the British Championships by sort of September time. So I was really pleased with that, but I still didn't feel that it was actually quite as fit as I had been prior to her being born. And I sort of wanted something to motivate me to get me training and get me back to sort of full fitness. And at the same time, it was sort of the nights were drawing in, and I wasn't sleeping very much because I was back at work, and my daughter's not a very good sleeper. So it was difficult basically getting up and training at 5 a.m. after only a few hours of sleep. So I signed up for the spine. And I know it's funny because it's a race that I'd known about for several years and I'd sort of followed. And I always said, as did my friends actually, that you'd be crazy to run that race, and why would you want to do that, put yourself through that in winter? But maybe part of me was secretly sort of thinking, I wonder if I could do that, So for all of those reasons, I signed up to give myself a challenge, and because I was sort of probably secretly intrigued by how it would go.
Do you just want to tell people listening who maybe haven't heard of the spine race a little bit more about what's involved, the distances, the type of weather, the type of terrain that you're going to be covering? So
it's a 268-mile race along the Pennine Way. It starts in Edale in the south and finishes in Kirkgate-Holme in the north. And it's a non-stop race. So it starts on Sunday morning, and from the moment it starts to the moment it finishes, you're racing. So how much you sleep is actually it becomes really tactical in terms of how much you sleep, where you rest, because you have to, you take into account, well, if you sleep more, maybe you'll move faster. But then there's also the question of whether you don't want to waste daylight, so you don't want to sleep during daytime hours. And obviously you're only going to get to checkpoints. You can't really, that's a little bit random. When you're going to get to the checkpoint, you can't necessarily say that's going to be during the nighttime. So all of these things factor in. You have to navigate. You have to carry your own kit. You have to carry a sleeping bag, a bivy bag. You have to carry a stove to cook a meal, lots of food, lots of clothes. So you're carrying a reasonable pack. So it's quite a challenge. It's sort of in several aspects. It's a challenge.
100%. There's a lot going on there. Carrying the kit, doing the navigation, dealing with the terrain. The fact I am starting to shake because I'm thinking of how cold it must be in January in the UK in the middle of winter. Yeah, tell us more about the race. What happened?
So I guess going into the race, I was probably fairly confident about the training I'd done beforehand. Mainly I was anxious about leaving my daughter because I never left her for more than a night before. And I was still breastfeeding her, so that was an extra challenge in the sense that I'd need to express milk at the aid stations. Otherwise, I'd sort of run the risk, I guess, of getting mastitis. So that was an extra challenge for me. So all of those things made me a little bit more anxious in terms of sort of my home side family life made me anxious. But the actual race itself, I felt fairly good about. I felt my preparation had been as good as I could make it. So I was just going to enjoy it. And the first day was quite wet and windy. So we were running into a strong headwind all day. I ran with the two, I ran in the sort of leading pack. And by the time we got to the first checkpoint, it was just me and the two previous winners, Ian Keith and Eugenie. And we went through that first checkpoint fairly quickly. I took a little bit longer because I had to express some milk. And then we ran through the first night, so we didn't sleep on the first night. And on the second day, Ian Keith dropped back a little bit. So it was just me and Eugenie leading the race. And we ran together essentially till checkpoint 4. So that was by now the second day in the afternoon. I guess, no, the third day in the afternoon. So this was Tuesday afternoon. We'd started on Sunday. And we ran together till that point. And then he, at that point, we'd stopped once to sleep. So we'd had about 3 hours sleep. And then for the fourth checkpoint, he stopped and he had a bit of a sleep and he had a massage and so on. And I took that opportunity to get away. So I left and I opened up a gap. And then he was quite exciting for the rest of that night because he then chased me and tried to close the gap and he didn't manage to. So when I got to the final checkpoint at the sort of early hours of that fourth day, I really desperately wanted to sleep, but I knew that if I stopped and slept, he would probably catch me, and then I felt that it would be very difficult to drop him again. So I didn't sleep. I just went straight through. So then going into sort of the fourth day of running, I'd only really slept for about 3 hours on the second night. So and then it was a risk that paid off. It was a gamble, but it paid off. And I got to the end that evening. So after 3.5 days of running, and then sort of I won the race. So it was great.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And how was it having to do the breastfeeding? And I don't know, I don't have children. How long does it take to pump breast milk? I mean, how is that like quite a big chunk of time? Like, what was that like?
So I'm quite lucky. It is quite quick for me. I think it probably only took 10 minutes that first day and I expressed a bottle of milk. The second day, I only expressed like half a bottle. And then by the third day, there was hardly anything. So I think just basically the milk production massively dropped. Probably partly because I was putting my body through immense stress and partly because I wasn't breastfeeding my daughter through the night. And that's one of the main things that stimulates milk production. When I got back and was reunited with her again, the milk production went straight back up again. So the body's so incredible in how it adapts to the circumstances. So for me, it wasn't a big issue. I know that for other women, it can take quite a long time to express a bottle of milk. So I guess I was lucky in that sense, but it's always been quite quick for me.
The sleep deprivation that you were going through, running for 4 days on like 3 hours of sleep, was anything happening mentally? Were you getting any like hallucinations or anything, or was it difficult to obviously to navigate and to keep concentration? What started happening then?
I think it was mainly the last day when I could really tell the lack of sleep. So the last day going over the Cheviots, I was definitely having hallucinations. I was seeing all sorts of things, the rocks, the slabs that I was running over, they sort of kept moving and forming different shapes, including the horses' heads and veiled nuns. I saw pigs running in the heather. I saw sort of trees doing yoga. It was really bizarre. It was just like everything you looked at sort of started to melt into something else. And I was aware that I was seeing things. So it wasn't. I didn't really think that I was seeing these, I didn't really believe that these things were happening, but it was quite bizarre. And actually towards the end, I kept thinking that people were standing by the side of the road cheering me in, but they weren't. It's just trees. And so I guess that was sort of a repeated disappointment. But yes, so I definitely, by the end of the race, and I was sort of falling asleep on my feet as well at that point. So I kept coming to and sort of panicking that I was actually, because I couldn't remember what I was doing for a second, and then you'd remember, and then you'd worried that you'd actually gone off the route while you were asleep walking along. But I think these were micro sleeps in reality, but that's how it felt at the time. So and I know that you were definitely sort of pushing quite close to the edge on that last day. I was anyway, because it was quite cold up there. It was very windy. It was a lovely day, but it was very cold and windy. And I was wearing all of my clothes and I was borderline, too cold. You can't move fast enough anymore to sort of generate enough body heat. So you're sort of reliant on the clothes you're wearing. And obviously in a race like that, you're kind of carrying as little as you can, but enough to remain safe. So it's a fine line. I was glad to finish when I did.
An absolutely incredible performance, 268 miles along the Pennine Way. You shattered the course record by 12 hours, while also obviously, expressing breast milk and feeding your baby at aid stations along the route. Afterwards, there was a huge amount of attention. What was it like after completing the race? Did you think that it would go so global?
Probably I wasn't really prepared for it. No, I mean, people had mentioned to me as I was running along that you know, the camera, the Spine has its own sort of media people. They said to me, you know, this is really big on social media. But I didn't really appreciate how big it was, I guess. And then when I got back and a reporter wanted to do an interview with me that night, it was all kind of pretty exciting, you know, being interviewed by a media reporter or something. And then the next morning, I got interviewed at the BBC breakfast on the TV. And I think after that, it just went a bit crazy, you know. Like my phone was like every single possible means of contacting you was, you know, I had my messages on my phone and emails and Facebook and Twitter, and so it all went a bit crazy. So it was quite overwhelming because I guess as a fell runner, I'm not really used to that sort of publicity, and I quite like to just. It's not like I really have any aspirations to be a celebrity. Probably one of the reasons that really the reason I've sort of agreed to do lots of interviews and things has been because I've had so much positive feedback in terms of people saying they've been inspired, and people saying it's good to chat about, you know, breastfeeding, about women's sport, about girls doing sport. So for all of those reasons, I think it's been worthwhile. I've had, you know, it's been really, really positive, the feedback that I've had. But in terms of me, you know, it's not like I have any ambitions to be a famous person. So I'm mainly doing it because I feel like it's maybe doing some good.
Oh, absolutely. Like, because it is so positive and amazing, and definitely, you know, starting these conversations about women running, especially just after they've had their children, and to go on and incredible role model, you know, 100% what you've done. But I just almost want to go back because, you know, in 2016, you'd won so many races, you'd had an insane 2015, and you talked about the pressure, but then you know, you got pregnant and suddenly the pressure was off you. No one was expecting you to do anything. But then in 2019, you've run the most incredible race ever. You've got this global publicity. Everybody knows that you're the first woman to win the Spine race, this 268-mile phenomenal challenge. Do you feel pressure now when you go into races or go into competitions? Has it changed you?
To be honest, I've not actually raced very much since the Spine, because I guess, like, I have another job. Like, I'm a vet and I've been doing a PhD. I've just been trying to write up the PhD and focus on family a little bit. So I've not actually raced very much. In fact, I've raced very little since the Spine. I'm racing in 3 weeks' time a race called the Petit Trot à Lyon. So I guess that will be the first time I've sort of been back in the limelight. But it's a team race, and I'm doing it with my husband and with a very good friend. It's actually a really strong team, but obviously if you're running as a three, there's so many other factors that come into it. So I guess I haven't really exposed myself that much at the moment to a situation in which I would feel real pressure. But what I would say is that if I start to feel that starts to feel too much, then I'll just stop and I'll do something else. Because basically for me, running has to be fun. It's not a career. It's just a hobby. So at the moment, at the point where it starts to feel like it's stressful, I'm not enjoying it, then I'll just do something different. Like I get most pleasure from just running in the hills. You know, I don't have to be racing. So if it means I end up doing sort of some other sorts of challenges under the radar and then telling people what I've done, just because I don't like the pressure, then so be it. But I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. But basically, I'm not. If I do start to feel stressed about the pressure of it, then I'll just back off and I'll do something, whatever it is that I want to do instead. Yeah. Because it is ultimately just a hobby.
And Jasmin, what advice and tips would you have for other women who want to get into running? They want to get into fell running. They want to spend more time outdoors. What advice would you have for them?
I would say just go out and enjoy it. Like, that's what I say to the kids that I speak to at schools and stuff as well. It's just about like going out and having fun and taking part. I think a lot of people, like, and this starts even at the level of school children, you know, they feel that they can't, that they're not good enough, and then they therefore shouldn't in some way. I think especially with girls. But I would just say really just go out there and have a go, because you'd be, especially like, for example, the fell running community is incredibly welcoming, and the people at the back really are going, you know, pretty slowly. It doesn't matter if you get timed out at a checkpoint. It's totally fine. You know, just go out and give it another go another day. It's just a wonderfully sort of friendly, welcoming sport, and you get to be in these, you know, fell running, you get to be in these beautiful places outdoors and enjoy that sort of the scenery and the wilderness and just the great company as well. But whatever sport it is that you do, I think ultimately you just enjoy it and just have fun. It's about participation. It's really not about how well you do.
Absolutely fantastic advice and top tips. And Jasmin, we're just going to shake things up a little bit now. I've got some quick fire questions. There's only about sort of maybe 7 or 8 of them.
I'm really bad at these sorts of things.
I'm sure you're not. I think I know the answers to a few of them. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
A particular brand? Are you sort of chamomile, or are you Earl Grey or Builders?
Oh no, I'm definitely black tea, like Builders tea, yeah. But with a strong tea, but with milk, yeah. But I'm definitely black tea.
Are you a morning or an evening person?
Morning.
What time does your alarm go off?
I'd say on average 5. But it can be earlier than that.
What's the earliest it's gone off?
You probably don't want to ask. Let's say it's a question between it going off the evening before or the next morning. Yeah, I guess when you're doing anybody that's done any mountaineering knows that for big days in the high mountains, if you want to, do some sort of, then the alarm can go off at 1 a.m, can't it? And that's still considered being the morning. So yeah, but in general, I would say it's probably on average 5 o'clock, but sometimes it'll be 4. It has been earlier than that, but that's probably a little bit crazy. So I would not advertise that too widely.
What type of music do you like listening to?
It's pretty eclectic. Probably in general sort of indie rock, but then I like classical music as well. So I wouldn't say I'm particularly musical myself, but I do enjoy listening to music.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite movie, a favourite film that you like to watch?
Let's see what would be my favourite movie. I think it'd be really difficult to pin one down. Like, what's my favourite movie of all
Would you have
time?
like a genre of movies that you like watching?
One film that I can is Dersu Uzala, if I'm pronouncing it right, by Kurosawa. I like that film. There's lots of films. Blue Velvet's a film that I like. I like Shining. Those sorts of films, I guess. So you like not really into sort of American high school movies. That's not really my thing.
Got you. But so you like horror and psychological thrillers?
Not necessarily horror. Like I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you could put it in a particular genre. I don't know. I might have to come back to you on that one. Like those are the films. Those are some films I can think of that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
So I know you are currently studying to be a PhD, and there's a ton of reading that you'll been doing around that. But are you currently reading a book at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm reading a book called The 8 Mountains by Paolo Cognetti, which my brother bought me. It was great.
Do you have like a mantra or a phrase that you use or that you live your life by?
No.
Okay.
I can't say that I have one mantra or phrase. No, not really.
What's your favourite piece of kit or gear that you have?
I'm the least bothered about kit or gear. I guess the only thing that I think you really need for running, like specifically for fell running, is a good pair of shoes. That makes a difference. But beyond that, you need a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, which you can wear pretty much any of. So my fell running shoes would be my main thing.
Got you. Now, sometimes I think I know the answer to this already, but I'm going to ask you: are you mountains or a beach person?
Mountains.
Yeah, I was going to say without a doubt, obviously that.
I think my ideal situation would be somewhere where you could live right by a beach and the sea, and be at the foot of mountains. Somewhere you go straight from sea to sky. If you see what I mean. Because I love swimming in the sea, especially when it's wild and wavy. I love the smell of the sea and the sound of the wind and on the beach and wild beaches. I'm not talking about the beaches where people lie around sun tanning themselves very much. But that's not really my sort of holiday. But there's wild Scottish beaches there. I definitely love those as well. So. Both really, but mountains. I'm more of a mountains person.
Yeah. What do you do to relax?
I guess go to the hills.
Favorite food when you're out in the mountains and running, and favorite food when you're at home.
I love food altogether. I think if there was my favorite foods. If you said things that I would have to choose what I would not want to be without. it would probably come down to bread, cheese, and apples and tea. And but if you wanted to say a specific meal, then I'm quite keen on pizza. So when we've done a big race, we tend to celebrate, and also because it's an easy meal, we tend to have pizza and then ice cream. So that's kind of what I'd like to have at home. And out on the hills, I mentioned I think hot cross buns with butter are pretty good when you're on the hills. If it's cold and you're on a hiking trip in the hills, you can't beat sort of hot chocolate in a flask. That can be absolutely wonderful. So yeah, those things.
And the big question is, do you put pineapple on your pizza?
No.
Fair enough. Jasmin, where would be the best place for people to find more information out about you and to follow along with your journey?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm not a massive social media person, I'm afraid. So I do occasional tweets, but they're not that often. But I do also write a blog, and I will at some point get round to writing up the spine, whether it's in a blog or whether it's in a sort of book. But if you follow me on Twitter, then you'll find that out. But don't expect too frequent updates, because I'm not a huge social media person.
Oh, but I love the idea of a book. I know you've got your PhD first to get that handed in, and then is that the plan after you've finished your PhD to start writing a book about the spine?
It's just a possibility. I don't know yet. But I'll definitely either write a blog or write it as a book.
Well, I think either will be incredibly well received. So yeah, that will be fun. Oh, I'm really getting really excited about that now. I'm like, yeah, that'll be awesome. Jasmin, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your life, your running journey, and the amazing races that you have been a part of. Absolutely inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A massive thank you to Jasmin for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about her journey. An absolute incredible woman. What a role model. Everything that we've talked about today is available at the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. If you go and visit the website, you can find out more information about me, my background, the different challenges that I've done, from the Marathon des Sables through hiking the Appalachian Trail and cycling from Vancouver in Canada all the way down the Pacific Coast Highway to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. Equally, you can also find the other women that I've spoken to and interviewed. So there's over 200 episodes, over 200 stories of women of all ages, all backgrounds, coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about what they've done, what they've achieved, what they've learned along the way, and to give you an advice and tips to motivate and inspire you as you go after your own adventures and challenges. So please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. I also just want to share a little bit more about some future guests that we have coming on the Tough Girl podcast. We're going to be catching up with Alice Morrison, who's an adventurer and journalist, and she's going to be sharing more about racing in the Tour d'Afrique, which is riding your bike from Cairo to Cape Town. She shares more about her first world trek from the highest point of North Africa to the Atlantic Ocean, and also running in the Marathon des Sables. We then speak with Rosie Swale Pope, who's 72 years young and running 6,000 miles from Brighton to Kathmandu in Nepal. This episode is a particular favourite of mine. Rosie, it has to be one of the most incredible women I've ever spoken to. She is just entertaining and lovely, and she's got some amazing stories to share. So please make sure that you do subscribe so you don't miss out on any of these episodes that we have coming out. So Tuesday, 7 a.m. UK time is when new episodes drop. So hit that subscribe button. If you could leave a review, that would be amazing. So what reviews do is basically when people are searching and they come across the Tough Girl podcast and they're thinking, should I download this? Should I not? Most people, if I'm shopping on Amazon, I will go look at the reviews and see what's been written. Same thing with podcasts. So if you can just leave a 5-star review in Amazon or wherever you listen to the Tough Girl podcast and just share, what you enjoy about it, which episodes have inspired you, how it's helped change your life, and why people should subscribe and listen, that would be absolutely amazing, because that's an incredibly powerful way of helping to get the message out there. I am, one woman show, banging the drum with my laptop and mobile phone. So help like that really does make a massive difference. And if you want to further assist the work that I'm doing and want to be part of the mission, then please do consider signing up as a patron. If you go and visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast, you can find more information out about that. Subscribe from $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. It really does add up and makes such a big difference in allowing me to continue to produce this content. That's everything from me. But wherever you are, whatever you are doing, have an amazing day. Give it your all. Give it 110%. Go for it. Take that first step. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. All right, take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.